Hope everybody's doing pretty good. I don't have a whole lot to say. I didn't prepare opening ceremonies this time. The goal of this convention this year was to just do something low key because we went all out with year two, and I didn't like the pressure of trying to outdo that. So I just wanted to throw together a fun one-day event. We have some really great panels. We have some first-time panelists. We have some first-time anime lockdown panelists. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But that should take us to our first panel. This is, I believe it is called Schrödinger's Robot, and this is coming live from Indonesia, which is pretty cool. How are you doing, my friend? You are live.
Right. Hello, hello. I'm good. Right. Okay. Right. So, hi. How's everyone? Hope you're all having a nice day. I understand it's pretty early in the morning for some places, especially in the States. But yeah, hi. Yeah. You can call me CES. And I'll be presenting this panel for today. So yeah, here goes nothing. Right. So a little bit about myself. I like robots. Obviously. Sometimes I write for the Indonesian Anime Times. It's the English version of Indonesian anime media Kaori Nusantara. If you've heard of it, I hope so. This panel was originally presented at Comic Frontier 15 in Indonesia last year. It's probably, I think, the biggest doujin event in Indonesia right now. And yeah, I watched. I attended, watched. Anime Lockdown in 2021, and I found it to be pretty cool. So yeah, after hearing about the panel submissions, I thought I'd try submitting one. So yeah, and basically here it is. Yeah. And sorry. Okay. Where was I? Yeah. And just a quick disclaimer. English isn't my first language, and this is I'm not as familiar with North American panel and con culture. So yeah, and this is the first time I've presented the panel in English. So please be nice. Anyway, yeah. So here we go. So why exactly this panel? Why Schrödinger's robot? So why the idea for this panel basically got started as a myth busting. I wanted to do like a myth busting thing, because of specifically not just this video by Giga about the quote unquote fall of Mecha, but I just thought that there were some quite interesting points that he pointed out that would be a good starting place for to do a sort of mecha myth busting kind of panel. So yeah, so that's why this topic. And so what this panel will mainly discuss is well, first of all, why it's important to even discuss mecha robot anime in the first place. Why the quote-unquote rumors of MECHA'S demise have been greatly exaggerated. Why it's alive, why it's surprise, not really alive, probably also dead. What is actually dying, and yeah, and what's in store for mecha anime and like mecha media in general. So let's begin. But first, let's for the purposes of this panel, let's define mecha as mecha as robot anime, the mecha genre in general, mecha-related media. So not just anime, games, live action movies, and most importantly, I think media from Japan and outside of Japan. So whether or not you can call shows from outside of Japan as anime is could be another panel by of itself. But for the purposes of this panel, let's keep it at that. So why is it important? This is a quite interesting line from the Japanese Animation Guide, The History of Robot Anime, which was a study that I believe was commissioned by a ministry in Japan in 2013. So robot anime's influence on visual creators around the world today vaults it to what could be called the top class of Japanese pop culture. That's what it says. And robot anime enjoys widespread recognition and has played a vital role in shaping Japanese culture and industry. So yeah, pretty important by all accounts. So, and also there's a couple of points it made as to why mecha anime and mecha media is important. There's four points I think that's pretty interesting to point out. This is a photo of the Anime New Century Declaration back in 1981. The event that took place, I believe, after? I forgot, but like during the premiere, when the Mobile Suit Gundam movies were coming out, and they had a gathering of Gundam fans that went like this, and it was like a coming out of otaku for the generation. I think if you're interested in learning more about the event, if you haven't, it's very interesting. I believe the writer Matt Alt did a long Twitter thread on his Twitter about the importance and the outcome of the event. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to read on, I think. So first things off, robot anime's development paralleled the rise of Japan's middle class as Japan progressed after World War II. So first, it's shaped by and shapes the socio-economic development of Japan. And another point is that it evolved with tokusatsu, or special effects heroes movies like Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, among other genres. So you could say that it represents an important nexus of Japanese anime culture, always incorporating elements from many other genres. So I guess the biggest example of it would be the Macross franchise, which obviously borrows a lot from idol culture. So mecha and idols, and even if you want to count the transformation sequences from the newest one, Macross Delta, it's obviously very inspired by magical girl transformation sequences. So always incorporating and borrowing a lot of elements from lots of art genres. And another point that's probably interesting to note is that it's also has a lot of original content and genre dedicated creators. So it kind of makes it like the ideal genre for analyzing what makes Japanese storytelling unique. And it's been a place where creators have made their mark and popularized anime creators globally. So like Ano, Hideaki Anno, of course, and Tomino Mamoru Oshii, of course. So it's done quite a lot in popularizing anime creators, and also it has played it has played an important role in popularizing anime works globally as well. So historically, a lot of the first early titles of early anime titles that were shown in a lot of countries happen to be mecha anime. So For example, say in the Philippines, Voltes 5 is huge and yeah, pretty popular there. And also Grandizer by Go Nagai and the anime by Toei. It's had a huge influence on Middle Eastern countries where what it was shown. So yeah, we'll be seeing a lot of big G in this panel. So keep an eye on him. So yeah, with all those said, mecha has been always, has been and always, and I believe will be a genre that's played an important role in like popularizing anime and has a lot of influence all over the world. This I find very interesting. If you do a quick search online, there's a lot of murals and street art depicting Grandizer in Middle Eastern countries, and the robot itself is often represented as a sort of folk hero people's champ. So yeah, it's really interesting to see how mecha has influenced people all over the world, even in places that you wouldn't think it has. And finally, I find this passage really interesting. So it says it's influenced not only the culture of anime, but the culture of the entire nation of Japan. And considering its instrumentality in the evolution of the medium anime is concerned, it's one of the most important genres anime has ever had. A look into the history of mecha is a look into the history of anime itself, which it paints a pretty flattering picture of the genre. But it's interesting because this is said by the guy who made a video on the rise and fall of the genre itself. So yeah, it's I think it's quite undeniable to see the impact and importance of the genre itself in anime and influencing both Japan and countries outside of Japan as well. So yeah, it's I would argue after all of that it's pretty darn important. So back to the myth busting part of the panel. Part of the video says mecha, it seems, just isn't profitable for a mass audience anymore. A lot of other genres make more money, and yeah, let's try to see if that's true or not. So since the video came out, there's been I've encountered a lot of like talking points like this, and I part of why I made this panel as well is I don't think that I haven't really seen like what's the word, rebuttal for these points as a basically that. And yeah, so is this true? As for there not being a lot of new mecha shows, the fall 2021 had a lot of shows, and even one from China, actually, this one, Ancient Girls Frame, which I believe was shown on Bilibili. So yeah, always a lot of new shows coming out, new movies. Even in this season, there's at least one, Witch from Mercury season 2. As for movies, Gridman Universe just came out last month, which I got to see in Japan, and pretty awesome. So it's not that there's a lack of shows always constantly coming up. There's always at least one coming up. If it's about other genres fitting better in the quote unquote modern landscape, there's been a slew of robot shows that have elements from other genres, and they've performed quite successfully. I would say. And yeah, and while also focusing on the mecha aspect of the show, so I don't think that's a pretty strong argument on that end. And on the toys merchandise, Gunpla only appealing to hardcore fan bases instead of mass audiences. Um, I can't vouch for mainstream audiences and everyone, and yeah, pretty much everyone. But I think arguably that Gunpla and robot toys that are pretty widely available and accessible, especially. So um, while I can't say that it is only appealing to the hardcore fandom, I would say that the fact that it's pretty much available everywhere in the world nowadays, um, yeah, it's pretty amazing that even like big box stores like Walmart and Target have Gundam model kits. Even Hobby Lobby has Gunpla right now. It's pretty, yeah, it's pretty amazing that that's possible, and just the fact that it's possible means that um, there the chances of, say, a random kid finding a Gunpla in the toy section of the store aisle, and from there having like a hobby around Gunpla isn't zero. So yeah, and well, this is this is bound to be pretty subjective, but I think especially with recent works, uh, the oh I think even more than using 3D CG to depict anime characters, using 3D CG to depict mecha and robots have improved a lot over the past years. As for a completely amazing example of it, I would say the Majestic Prince movie. Obviously, I can't show the clip here, but if you can find it anywhere, you can find it. It's pretty darn worth a watch. I believe it is made by Studio Orange, um, of Hoseki no Kuni, Beastars, and Trigun Stampede fame. So yeah, it's pretty darn great. So yeah, and as for its financial success, uh, if from a report by Bandai Namco, from Bandai Namco's report for their Q1 fiscal year 2023. I hope I'm reading that right. Yeah, even against the shonen big trees here, Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, Gundam has, for its group wide sales, has overtaken Dragon Ball for yeah. So it's pretty that's pretty incredible. And I hope I'm reading this chart correctly. You can see that by this moment in time, the sales, total group wide sales for Gundam, for the Gundam franchise, has overtaken Dragon Ball. So yeah, I would argue that means it's pretty much a financial success. And just as a comparison, and I do hope I'm reading this correctly. And these charts are by this fellow, Arzart. I really recommend their site that has a lot of sales data, and just comparing it to say the sales for Kadokawa's video business for a year. The sales for Gundam for 3 months is almost as close as the total sales for the video business this year. video business for a year, which I think encompasses the sales for animes and Blu-rays, if I'm not mistaken. I do hope I'm reading this correctly, but yeah, just to give an illustration of how much money Gundam is making, which is a lot. So even so some, I guess some would argue like oh, that's just Gundam and Gunpla, and well, that might be true that a lot of the success is attributed to Gundam. I would argue that the success and launch of other mecha merchandises like Good Smile Company, who is pretty known for their Figma and Nendoroid lines. I think last year or the year before launched or a few years before. I'm not so sure. I'm sorry. Launched their own mecha toy line, good Mecha Smile, and it's been coming up with a lot of model kits and robot figures that cover a lot of franchises that Bandai Namco doesn't make the toys for. So just from this anecdote alone, I would argue that there is a thriving market for these toys and these series. So yeah, pretty much, yeah, I would argue that makes it pretty much financially successful. So putting all of that into account, yeah, the title of the panel itself, is it dead or is it alive? Is it dead and alive? Which, yeah. So yeah, some say mecha is in decline, but new shows are being made even now. It's a niche genre, but it's popular around the world, and it's hard to get into and not as accessible. But robot toys can be found and bought everywhere, and it's said to be stale, but somehow original shows that innovate in some way keep getting made. I think that the anime on the left, Granbelm, is a pretty good example of that, in how it tries to incorporate elements from magical girl shows into a mecha show. And yeah, it's definitely interesting that even with the shows that are being made now, people are still trying to push the envelope of the genre. So yeah. I think this is pretty much what makes any kind of discussion online pretty hard. A lack of clear definitions, a lot of time arguing on definitions and speculation, moving goalposts, pretty much for any genre. I think, especially for niche genres that tend to be have a higher chance to are usually not exactly misunderstood, but how to say it. People usually assume it's something when it's actually has a lot more nuance to it, and yeah, not acknowledging that nuance is not helping in the discussions around it. And so yeah, I think it's there's not really a paradox, and it's I think once you go into it, there is not really a paradox. Though I still went with that title because it sounds I think it sounds interesting. but yeah, once you move the once you zoom out a little, it's pretty clear to see that there's not really a paradox per se on whether mecha anime is dying or not. Um, I think there's when discussing these kind of things, it's kind of hard because mainstream or niche isn't so easily defined anymore. Um, for example, Doraemon is everyone in Japan and Indonesia and India pretty much knows Doraemon, but um, I think it would be I would argue it would be considered niche in North America. So yeah, from there, like, how do you define mainstream or niche? And yeah, there's a lot of emerging fandoms and markets um, in other countries outside of, let's say, America and Japan or Europe, for media properties that that make it kind of hard to say something, to say whether something is mainstream or niche. So yeah, is a show that's watched by 1 million people niche compared to a show that's watched by 10 million people? Yeah. So yeah. So to the question, is mecha dead or dying? I don't know. I think not. Genre definitions keep evolving. So what constitutes mecha anime is always evolving. Like, do South Korean robot animations count as mecha anime? Probably not. Probably if you ask that, like, in the past 10 years, probably not, but maybe in the next 10 years, who knows? How do we define what counts as mecha anime? Who gets to define it? And why don't we say that certain genres like sports anime is dead when it has fewer shows coming out? Why is it always? Why are the black sheeps always mecha and magical girls that keep getting misunderstood? So yeah. And if mecha is a genre and generally isn't limited to Japanese media or even anime, why do we only look to Japan and Japanese anime? Mecha is that to whom? So yeah, a couple of questions that probably interesting to think about. This probably this I find really interesting because based on the previous things I mentioned, Gigax videos on the fall of mecha and Mecha: The Rise and Fall of Giant Robots has a lot of views for sure, but I stumbled on the Vietnamese dub video for Gundam Built Fighters Try Episode 1 on YouTube, and it has almost 8 million videos as of last year, probably higher by now. So yeah, kind of hard to mix it to define what makes something mainstream or niche or not. Oh, and Gundam is very, very popular in Vietnam, by the way. So yeah, pretty popular in Southeast Asia, and I believe that Vietnam is a huge market for Gundam and Gunpla, and I believe there are some Gundam games that get released in Vietnam as well for mobile. So there's a quote that I find interesting from Super Robot Wars game series. He was producer, but he's now the series supervisor, Takanobu Terada. In an interview with 4Gamer, when asked about the decline of amount of mecha anime coming out, He says that that's an easy conclusion to draw if you're comparing the state of robot anime now with how it was in the late 80s, with robot anime being aired on TV every day. But we're still getting plenty of robot anime. He even says there could easily be more hit robot anime on the horizon. So no, I don't worry about robot anime being in decline. In fact, if people say it might be out of style, I consider that an opportunity. It means less competition for us in a sense. So yeah, as for how it's that pretty much covers the myth busting part of the panel, and as for how mecha anime and mecha media are doing around the world, which I want to highlight is in Japan it's obviously doing pretty well. Gundam Hathaway, I believe now I'm not so don't quote me on this, but I think it was the second highest grossing Gundam film, but I believe it beat out Char's Counterattack, but I'm not so sure on that. Yeah. More mecha toys, not just from Bandai, Good Smile Company. There's also more mecha anime for children still coming out, a lot of more mecha games. So a good example that I feel don't often gets discussed is Shinkalion, is a franchise by Takaratomi, toy maker Takaratomi, who also makes Transformer toys with Hasbro. It's a new, quite new franchise that started in, I believe, in the mid 2020s, in partnership with I believe JR, the Japan Railway Company. So the Shinkansen's transform into robots, and yeah, pretty much a hit with any train fan would be pretty much a hit with any train fan or robot fan. It's been pretty successful getting a sequel in Shinkalion Z, and has a movie as well. And there's also, besides Shinkalion itself, there's been quite few mecha anime shows aimed at kids by Takaratomi, like Earth Grunner. I'm not so sure. And Drivehead, also another mecha show. And also Takaratomi, known for Zoids, which is still had a new series coming out last year, Zoids Zero, and I believe is celebrating their 40th anniversary. So I'm not sure, there might be a new project coming up, but yeah. As for new mecha anime series coming out, definitely new ones are coming out and being aimed at children. Yeah, you arguably is doing their part to ensure that there's a future for mecha anime, for more mecha media in the future, since that means a lot of new fans. And yeah, Gridman Universe just came out last month. It hit number 5 in box office for opening weekend. It's making a modest $3.34 million US so far. And I think it's an interesting case to an interesting example of something, since it was from a tokusatsu show from the 90s, if anyone wasn't aware of that, which had a sort of reimagining / reboot anime show, the SSSS Gridman, in I forgot, 2017-16. And yeah, I think it proves that there's always new opportunities for new robot franchises to come out, and even be even for old legacy franchises to be rebooted and be something that's popular for new viewers. And yeah, I'd say it's doing quite well right now. The movie is amazing if you like both Dynazenon and SSSS Gridman. So if and when it comes to the States or anywhere else, I highly recommend it. And yeah, as for kids media, there are a lot of 3D CG robot shows in South Korea, especially. Tobot is a wildly successful and popular show in South Korea. It's been aired in multiple other countries, including Southeast Asian ones. And it's surprising it's still continuing until now. Though it might not be as popular in other parts of the world, but it sort of proves that there's there's a huge audience for these kind of shows, and Robocar Poly as well. Though it's aimed at at an even younger audience. And yeah, also Transformers, always something new for Transformers coming out. But I would argue that this proves that there's still a lot of there's a huge audience out there all over the world that are into robot media, and that pretty much means that in like 5 or 10 years from now, those kids that grew up watching robots as kids would still be fans of robot anime or robot media. And yeah, they'll probably start getting into Gundam, but that might also mean that there's a possibility of a new franchise to come in and aimed at those older audiences. And as for other kinds of media, as for games, we had quite a bit of new titles like Daemon X Machina, which I think is going to get a sequel, I believe, and the excellent 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim, and also we somehow got an HD remake of Front Mission, and I can't believe I forgot to put it into the panel here, but just a few months ago, the announcement for a new Armored Core. Yes, still a lot of new mecha games coming out. So yeah, definitely means that there's a market for these games. Oh, and yeah, Super Robot Wars, their latest console title, Super Robot Wars 30, their first ever global release title on Steam, and it pretty much made made a lot of money. I want to say made a lot of money. So almost estimated of 200,000 to 500,000 owners on Steam, not including our platforms. But an interview with Takanobu Terada, the producer, now series supervisor, mentioned that it sold better than Super Robot Wars V for the PlayStation, which had 500K plus sales on the PlayStation. It actually won an award that year for the amount of sales it had. So yeah, it's sold a lot, and I think it definitely proves that there's a global audience for mecha media, and a lot of people would buy and play this game. So that's definitely a success on this end. Yeah, as for new games that are coming out as well. Level 5, the people who made Professor Layton and Yokai Watch, among other things, they previously released in Japan Megaton Musashi, which the anime also aired in 2021, second season last year, I think. The Switch game was originally Japan only, but they announced that they are going to release a global version of the game, crossplay included across multiple platforms. So yeah, just more good news and lots more mecha games and media coming out. So yeah, with all of those things considered, I arguably around Mecha is pretty alive and well around the world as well. We had Pacific Rim, the Gundam movie is coming out. There's a lot of games from around the world, and we have shows and media from the Philippines, South Korea, China, and even Saudi Arabia. So not just from Japan, but there's been a lot of mecha games around the world. Super Mecha Champions is a mobile game, and Hardcore Mecha is it's on Steam. Creeksfront Tactics is an upcoming game, actually from an Indonesian developer. That's funnily enough, it's a front mission. It's sort of like Front Mission, and was actually in the works before the Front Mission HD remake got announced. So yeah, a lot of hopefully it does well, knowing that there's a market for these kind of mecha Front Mission style games. And probably the most surprising one to me, UFO Robo Grandizer has an upcoming game by French publisher Microids, and I've mentioned earlier how big Grandizer is in some parts of the world, Middle East, France, where it's also known as Goldorak. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but yeah, just a lot of new media and games coming out, and I stumbled. I came across this news of this last year. In Saudi Arabia, there was I think it's currently ongoing, a sort of event, Anime Village in the city of Riyadh, I believe, and there was a month-long sort of expo, and part of the expo itself had an Anime Village section, which had displays from titles like Kimetsu no Yaiba, Naruto, and other shonen titles, but among them were also a huge display for Mobile Suit Gundam, which is pretty interesting, because it's kind of funny to see that there's I don't believe that there's a Zaku statue of this size in Japan, but there is one in Saudi Arabia, which is pretty funny. And also, quite surprisingly, not surprising actually, knowing the popularity of Grandizer over there, late last year they built a 33.7 meter tall statue of Grandizer in that same area. So pretty funny to see how none of Go Nagai's robot creations have giant statues in Japan, but that there's a huge Grandizer statue in Saudi Arabia and one large Mazinger Z statue in Spain. So yeah, pretty interesting, and yeah, just shows how much of an audience there is for robot. Yeah, how much an audience there is for robot media, and how there are a lot of robot fans around the world as well. And what I think is what I think is the takeaway, and what's interesting about this is that there's been a lot of announcement of new projects that involve mecha IPs and titles, but it's in collaboration with other countries besides Japan. So Big G Grandizer getting a new series in partnership between Dynamic Planning and Saudi Arabia's Manga Entertainment. And also in live action, Voltes V has an upcoming live action production between Toei and Filipino media company GMA Network that's coming, I believe, next month. this month, premiering this month in theaters in the Philippines. And also surprisingly, just quite recently, a Japanese production company, Big One, who also made the live action movie Bravestorm, which was a reboot of the robot anime Red Baron, and I believe a tokusatsu show. I forgot Silver something. Sorry, I forgot. But they're currently planning a live action, a short of Getter Robo, Go Nagai and Ken Ishikawa's Getter Robo. It's actually, I believe they did a crowdfunding for Japan on Campfire, and it pretty much succeeded. And they've just opened up a Kickstarter page actually. So if you're interested, you could check out their Kickstarter page. And and also the elephant in the room, the upcoming live action Gundam movie by Legendary Pictures, who are notably they're also, I believe, a subsidiary of a Chinese conglomerate. I believe it. I forgot the name, but again, I think it's interesting in what these shows, what these productions show, how they seem to be say the outcome of the many decades of Japanese media having an impact globally, and now the rest of the world is trying to countries where those mecha shows were popular in, like Saudi Arabia and the Philippines, are trying to make their own in production with Japan. So it's interesting, and might show what the future might hold in that co-productions between countries like this for mecha-related titles could be even more prominent in the future. But but the big question is there a future for mecha anime? So this is the third and final part of this panel. It's also about anime industry labor issues. So an interesting quote by Sunrise producer Naohiro Ogata. He mentioned that Sunrise, the anime studio making Gundam, they might be the only company left capable of producing hand-drawn robot animation at such a high level. There aren't many young people who learn to draw mecha, and there are only a limited number of places for them to work doing so. Older animators can't work as intensively to avoid physical injury, so now there are fewer people who can do mecha animation. It's becoming more and more difficult to create hand-drawn mecha animation. So, and anime industry issues. Mecha is actually alive and dead in the sense that, I think while mecha as a genre itself is doing very well nowadays, I fear that a certain type of mecha anime is dying, which is 2D mecha anime. And anime needs people to animate it, obviously, but if there aren't any more mecha animators or people that specialize or even could draw mecha animation, that definitely doesn't bode well for 2D mecha anime in the future. It's very skill intensive, and being an animator in Japan doesn't pay much in the first place, and it's a vicious cycle because with the difficulty in producing 2D mecha anime, it means that there are even less opportunities for young animators to train. And there are. I'm sure that everyone is are already aware of the issues plaguing the Japanese animation industry, and a lot of other places and sources have talked about this better than I have. But yeah, um, the collapse of the probably not collapse, the decline of the animator training, how should I say, system. Well, issues with animators training, animator pay, and all of that. Yeah, it just adds to the amount of problems that producing a 2D mecha show needs. And if you see that a lot of more productions are using 3D CG, especially for mecha, it might be because the pipeline for producing it and workflow for making it and the working conditions to do so are better. It might not necessarily mean that using 3D CG is cheaper. At some point, it just might be what is doable because there are no 2D mecha animators to draw their robots by hand, which is kind of sad. So yeah, looking at all of that, it kind of puts the idea in my head that mecha as a genre might also be the canary in the coal mine for anime. Since of course this problem affects all anime nowadays, not just mecha shows, but you can already see the shift from like 2D to 3D already happening in other places like idol anime, especially for dance scenes. And yeah, the problem, the way that mecha shows are made, especially in how tied they are to things like merchandising, needing animators who specialize in creating them, means I think means that it gets harder by common problems by that plague the anime industry. I do believe that the 3D CG technology for anime has improved and is already at the point that it rivals 2D animation. But yeah, even if one day the 3D CG for anime, especially for mecha, would be as good or even better than using traditional 2D animation, it also means that 2D mecha animation as an art form will be lost. So yeah, and I think that's quite a loss for everyone, especially since that we've had so much visual, a lot of anime's traditions come from there, like say animators like Kanada or Obari, things like the Obari pose, Itano circuses. It would just be a loss to the medium in general, and it would be sad if that would happen. And what's pretty bleak, probably no. How do I say it? Anyway, this what's pretty worrying is that this also could happen to any show. Logically, Isekai Oji-san last year had a lot of problems, I believe, and episodes had to be delayed, and it even restarted airing from episode 1. Most recently, I believe the Nier Automata anime had a lot of delays. So yeah, just probably just the tip of the iceberg of productions having issues and having their episodes be delayed, and probably worryingly becoming the norm. So if mecha is dying in a way, and it's the quote unquote it's truly the, and if it's true that it's the quote unquote canary in the coal mine for anime, then is anime dying? Isekai as a genre is said to be pretty popular now, but would it still be in 10 or 20 years? Mecha was pretty dominant during the 70s and 80s after all. A lot of mecha games with less mecha anime means probably means that the demand is there, but the production can't keep up. Something quite interesting with the newest Super Robot Wars title, since it's a crossover title game that has a lot of anime titles in it. And I think we're almost running out of time, so I'll make it quick. Yeah, but it's starting to adapt novels and a lot of media besides anime. So the demand is there, but there's not as much mecha animes to adapt, probably. Conditions have made it hard to make mecha anime, possibly, and it can happen to any genre. And there might be a day when 2D hand-drawn Japanese anime is only reserved for high-budget, lavish movies, commercials, or just a few big-name titles, or disappear completely. Just like how you probably can only expect to have fully 2D drawn robots in a Gundam title for now. This is the AJA industry report for 2021. I believe they've already released a new report for 2022, but some of the points from here that's interesting are: anime makes more money from overseas and from Japan now. Production costs are rising. There's not enough workers to keep up. Anime production companies were in the red in 37.7 in 2020. It might be that Japan's monopoly of anime style will end, and the production and consumption of anime will become even more global. Just looking at productions like Grandizer and like the new Grandizer coming out, that might be true in the future. But I do believe that the genre itself won't die out completely. An interview with one of the staff from the Mobile Suit Gundam narrative movie. Originally, this mecha scenes in there were to be made using 3D CG, but a lot of it ended up being hand drawn because the staff really wanted it to be. So yeah, if people like it, people will find a way to make it happen. But people do die from poor working conditions. So yeah, I guess people need to put more attention to the working conditions of people making the works we love, or the genres and works we like might be gone forever. And yeah, that is pretty much it. But I do want to say this and end it on a more hopeful note. These are two indie mecha animes I found on YouTube. One is 2D, one is 3D, and they're pretty good. I do think that as long as people like it, there will always be someone who tries to make it possible. This one, especially Aerial Worship Atlantis, I really appreciate how the team tried to do it and try to make something in a sort of 90s, 80s Gynex style anime. They tried to make something like that, and yeah, it shows. And is mecha dead or alive? Yes. Is it dying? Maybe, probably. Will it die out completely? I sure do hope not, and I don't think so, but I sure do hope not. And yeah, that's all for the panel. Thank you for listening.
Nice. Do you have social media that people can follow you on?
I do have, but I think if you
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Twitter, yeah. I think the anime lockdown panel liked some of my tweets, so I think you could find it there.
Okay.
Also, and I just want to give a shout out to the Indonesian Anime Times, the site I usually write for, and at Anime Herald. Good stuff, good stuff. And for podcasts, Mobile Suit Breakdown is something you definitely want to listen to if you're interested in Gundam at all. Giant Robot FM, and do you remember Macross, who I believe are doing a panel as well? So yeah.
Yeah, we have a Macross panel later today. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting how there's like 3 mecha panels, I believe.
Yeah, mecha may or may not be dead. Definitely not at Anime Lockdown. We've always had a lot of robot panels.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us. You have a great rest of your day, and hopefully, what time is it where you are?
It's almost 10 p.m. at night.
Oh, that's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah.
You have a good night. Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.